Hey guys, welcome to Maganimation, episode 7.
South Park.
South Park, we finally here. I am Pat, and I'm here with Sharkfoot, my co-host. And we've been taking insanely long breaks on the recent episodes of Maganimation. Our last one was Fantastic Planet, which I think we did about a month ago.
Yeah, it was a great one by Roland or Renee
Lalou.
Lalou.
Renee Lalou,
One of those
yes.
weird French names.
Yeah, make
now
sure to
we're
remember that.
finally back with a new episode, doing Matt Stone and Trey Parker's masterpiece, I'd say.
Well, let's say Trey Parker and Matt Stone probably is a better way to do that arrangement.
He's got to get credit somewhere.
Yeah, well, you just put the Jew on the top. I thought that was a little...
What's wrong with Jews?
I'm not saying that. We're not going down that rabbit hole.
I think we're already there.
We've dug it down deep. So far the show's been a mix of a lot of classic stuff and then some stuff that really we liked artistically, like the new season of Samurai Jack or Fantastic Planet. But for the most part, we talked about Ren and Stimpy and Ed, Edd and Eddy and stuff we grew up on. South Park is a weird one because it's still on. We're talking about a show that's still currently on television.
Tomorrow will be the next season premiere of season 21.
Yeah, season 21.
Which has been pretty anticipated. They've been playing like every episode all week, I think.
Yeah.
Which they do that every time a new season starts up anymore, I think. But some people don't have as high hopes for it. So based on the last two seasons anyway.
Well, I really liked last season before we get into the whole show. I liked last season, the troll thing, but the season before that I thought was very disappointing despite people praising it and saying it was great. I didn't think the continuity stuff worked that well.
That was the one with PewDiePie, right? And the holograms and
stuff. Yeah, I think it was the PC culture. That maybe been season 18. I get them mixed up because season 19 is like so forgettable to me. Season 18 was when PC Principal got introduced and then they kept him in season 19.
Yeah. Okay, and then it was Final Retribution or whatever for PC Principal, and then the next
Timmy writes the journals thing, and then season 20 is the troll one with Gerald,
right,
where he's the troll knight. I thought that was a much better season than 19.
Yeah, it's still, for me, it kind of died off in the end. Like the joke kind of ran
I
out
agree.
of gas.
It was like a half a season plot line that was dragged out to.
But fortunately, South Park's just not those 3 seasons. So
yeah, and we can't just talk about the new South Park because Maganimation, the idea is making animation great again, and we want to talk about. With this show specifically, what we came about is that we're both pretty big Trey Parker, Matt Stone fans, I'd say. Especially now, we watched Orgasmo, Cannibal the Musical, Team America,
Book of Mormon and whatnot. And
Book of Mormon.
And it's really interesting because they weren't originally animators, and in fact, like Matt Stone was a math major in college, and Trey Parker was a theater or music major.
Yeah.
And they got together in a film class, which is an extra credit thing that they were doing, and they've had the same sense of comedy and humor and everything and that. And then they made a project together, and everyone's doing some random artsy things, so they just wanted to make a fart joke and called The Spirit of Christmas, which is
we remember Trey. He originally did that show that was about the America, the founding of America. He did this animated short in college. That was like,
I saw that.
Yeah, it's like South Park. It's Michael Moore ripped it off in Bowling for Columbine, actually, but
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, it's like the story of the Native Americans and stuff like that. And then they did that. And then they were able. Cannibal was supposed to be Trey's film for college, his like thesis, but then he ended up getting like $100,000 so he could do it as a movie,
mm-hmm.
and he just got dumped, cheated on by his girlfriend Leanne, his fiance, who he had been with for years. So he actually made Cannibal the Musical as a response, as kind of he used Leanne as a muse and have it where he's a character with the horse named Leanne that he loses.
Yeah. And this bitterness carries on throughout South Park as Leon Cartman, as we've just realized recently.
Well, then Trey and Matt then did this Christmas short, and it got a lot of stuff, and everyone liked it. So then they got a friend who was a head of a studio, and he called them and said, "Can you guys make me a Christmas card of that? That thing you did." And they gave him like a few $1,000s. They said.
And this is before the internet was like as mainstream as it is today. So that people, it would start off as a VHS tape. It would go to somebody else, and they would copy it, make another VHS tape, give that to 2 of their friends, and so on and so forth. Exponential viewing. Which is what really got it famous. And what they didn't do was put their name on it, so nobody knew that was them that made it, which is just one of those little weird, funny things.
Well, they kept hearing people say to him, like, "Man, have you seen this awesome short with these kids and Jesus and stuff?" And they're like, "Yeah, I made it, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's sweet. We made it." So a network ended up finding that. The producer, his name is Brian Graydon. He's the one. He was like a head of Fox at one point and stuff like that. And he worked at Comedy Central. So he had Trey and Matt come in to do a show, and they thought it was only going to have a few episodes and be done. they had no idea it was going to become this like
277 episodes later.
well, this culture shock that South
Yeah.
Park just
Well, it was like a new age Simpsons.
it was, and it hit the ground running like The Simpsons, where after the first few episodes, everybody was hearing about it, and I mean it was like overnight South Park. I mean, I heard about it immediately when I was like 6 or 7.
I heard about it in 3rd grade.
I went.
I was like 8.
I went. I was on a way. I was on a trip back with my parents' vacation in like 90, 97, 98 from Pennsylvania, going back down to Texas, and we stopped at a hotel, and South Park Comedy Central was on in the hotel, and we watched it. And I was a kid, and it was one of honestly the most like insane experiences of my life. It really was. Like I had no idea that you could do animated stuff like that. I didn't know you could do just such crude animation. Because when we talk about the show making animation great again, people think we're sticklers and that we want. I don't know if it's
No.
stigglers or sticklers,
It's
but
just
they.
like again going to that previous point about how they weren't animators and they made a cartoon. That's what the most like animation's such a good form. You can do anything with it, and they did that, and they still do it to this day.
Well, we wanted to say because people think this show's about great animation and art style, but that's not necessarily true.
It's about it as a medium.
It's using animation as a medium to tell a story. Trey and Matt's animation's very crude, but because of that, and then they were able to take it to computers, they're able to tell stories in a way that other animated shows haven't been able to do before or after. Because they were both influenced, they were both big Monty Python fans and influenced by Terry Gilliam's animation, which we're both huge fans of, and you can see the influence once you hear that.
Yeah. Like once you mentioned that, it just pretty much all became clear. It's like a pretty much cheap version of Terry Gilliam in a way. Not like negative in a way, but I mean it was just construction paper laid over and animated in stop motion. So
Well, Trey and Matt tried to say Monty Python was the influence because every time you would tune into Monty Python, you never knew what was going to happen. It was a different thing. It could go anywhere. And Trey is actually, it's funny, Trey's background is he's kind of a board game nut. He's a real nerdy guy.
D&D nerd.
D&D, he's the dungeon master. And he says because he was a DM for so long, he thinks it made him a good storyteller.
Right.
And you could see that connection to South Park kind of being a town being built and moved around like an RPG. It's why it works so well as a video game. But the thing about South Park, the early days, is it was this really creative, musically inclined guy. You have Trey Parker, who's very funny, very talented, good actor, classically trained, has a couple movies under his belt like Orgasmo. Then you have Matt Stone, who's a very business-minded guy who knows
Again,
how to
math
make
major.
money, knows how to produce. His father was an economist. His dad, he had a very, very Jewish, to put it lightly. And that collaboration was one guy who knew how to market and pitch the show and present it, and another guy that had this creative energy. And then they both had the same taste and sense of humor, which is very important to a collaborative process.
Really one of the most iconic partnerships in entertainment. Flat
Yeah.
out Matt Stone, Trey Parker.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say that it's very close to a Lennon-McCartney type situation where the two guys together make something that's really impactful. So South Park becomes a cultural phenomenon, and it's on for years. And, you have the movie, which in my opinion is one of the funniest, best done musicals pretty much ever as a movie. And then they started to make South Park the 6-day thing where they had to make an episode in a week. And you see the documentary 6 Days to Air this. And South Park changed a little bit after like its first 10 years where it became much quicker and more timely. It was less stories about these kids in these towns reflecting ideas of Americana.
It became major reflections on what's going on in society and satire on just the modern world.
Celebrity that week, whatever was going on that week was in South Park.
Very crazy type story arcs that just all tied in together brilliantly and just conveyed the message that he was trying to display to the crowd.
But we're just giving you background now, and we're a little under the 10-minute mark, so I guess we can go into the review here a bit. But I just want to give you guys a history that Trey Parker, Matt Stone, they both had this love for Monty Python. They met in college. They moved out to LA in a crappy truck. They would go fart on celebrities and take photos and photobomb them with farts.
Right, that was just their personality, just punk rock.
Yeah, they were total punks. Like, they would pull up to guys in nice BMWs on cell phones, and Matt would roll his window down and say, "Nice car, faggot." And, they were very crude, and they did the movie Basketball, which we're both big fans of, but Trey and Matt aren't, even though I think there's stamps all over it, despite what they say. But you could tell there was this creative energy going there in that mid-90s up until the mid-2000s that led to Team America and all that. Now they're huge, bigger than ever. Book of Mormon's one of the biggest Broadway plays of all time. They have a video game out. They have The Fractured Butthole's coming out.
I think it already did, if not soon.
It's right around the corner. I think it's like a couple weeks before it comes out. I think we're right here.
Really excited for it.
Yeah, because I really like the first game, just a little short. But now that we're past the setup, basically these two guys who had the same kind of background, they had the same taste, which is very important, and they had it. They were very punk rock. They hate LA culture. They hate. You can go back and see their earliest stuff and see how anti-establishment, anti-LA celebrity culture they are. They have
Yeah.
no vanity.
In their battle with censorship.
Yeah. But then we get into South Park. In South Park, essentially a story of four boys, Cartman, Kenny, Stan, and Kyle. Stan is Trey Parker. Kyle is based off Matt Stone. The parents' names are based off their parents'
Yeah,
names.
Randy is, Stan's dad. You got Cartman, who is Leanne's son, who's
And
a fat bastard.
and
Then,
all the characters are based off people. Oh yeah, and then there's Kenny, but they have people that are based off people they knew. Like Mr. Mackey was someone he
right.
actually had a teacher in school used to stop him in the hallways and be like, "Don't run in the
No.
hallways, okay?"
Yeah. He makes $1 million off him now.
Yeah, no, I
Those
love that.
VHS openings are amazing. But,
Yeah, by the way, if you ever get a chance, when I first saw South Park a lot, you used to be able to buy these VHSs of episodes of shows back in the day at a video store. And South Park, they did a great job with this. They would have Trey and Matt shoot these really cheap intros, and then they would put like 3 episodes on a VHS tape.
mhm.
And it would always start with Trey and Matt at the beginning. Like there's one where they're petting a dog, and the continuity changes. The dog's different every shot, and they're like, "This is our favorite episode of South Park," and they say it for every episode.
They do it for, literally every episode. Like, there's one making bacon with
Bacon with Macon, yeah.
And it's just cannibalism joke the whole time, and it's hilarious.
They keep feeding a pig bacon, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Macon, what's
And
the bacon?"
It's just weird because like their humor transfers all the mediums that they get involved in. It's not just bound to South Park. There's the South Park qualities in everything that they do.
Yeah, even Book of Mormon has South Park humor to it.
Very much like it's potty humor, but tasteful potty humor.
Now going back to Cannibal, which you just saw recently, you can see the aesthetic foundations and comic pacing for South Park in a lot of that
Very
movie,
much,
and
yeah.
the way it's shot, how it looks in Colorado.
It's like a precursor to Bigger, Longer, and Uncut.
I agree. I really think it is, and then maybe even that to Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Going back that far, and I would love to see a new adaptation of Cannibal done by Trey and Matt on Broadway.
Of course.
I think because I have seen some stage productions online, but I would love to see them do one where they'd flesh it out a little bit more. I just think with South Park, it follows these boys, and they live in small town America. And unlike The Simpsons, which is a reflection of the sitcom in suburbia and a deconstruction of the nuclear family, right? A realistic sitcom. South Park has a lot more layers going on than that. It's not a sitcom.
It's actually just an ongoing series of running gags and just the perspectives of these 4 kids.
Yeah, but then the town really starts to get fleshed
like
out,
Mr. Garrison goes through his sex changes. Butters becomes more of a prominent character. Even Craig and Clyde and all the other kids in the class.
Randy starts to dominate the show.
Anytime Randy's in, it's not a disappointment. But whenever they start focusing on these kids and they all get intertwined, like the one episode with the shoes and the list.
Yeah.
That's a great episode where they bring in all the kids and whatnot.
But the thing about South Park is that it's what I really like about it, and why I think it's a great example for animators to study. And you kind of pointed this out a little bit earlier, but is the fact that you don't need an animation background or a background in any art form that you're doing, be it music or film, anything. You don't need to be classic trained. You just need to have creativity and ideas and put effort in,
and an eye for direction.
Yeah, an eye. That's true. But yeah, collaboration too.
Yeah, and if you have somebody to work with like that, you can bounce ideas off of. Like my good friend Pat here.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Trey and Matt still work together 20 years later.
Yeah.
It didn't stop. And I think it's simply because, and they did that show My George Bush, which was a sitcom that was very Faulty Towers.
Mm-hmm.
Very influenced by Monty Python. I pretty much loved everything they've done, so I'm a bit of a fanboy, but this show's about fanboyism in a way. But the thing about South Park is that I think more than most sitcoms, well, not sitcoms, even shows that have been on television in the late 20th century and the early 21st century, it had more cultural impact and influence than most shows I've seen on television.
Mm-hmm.
Like South Park definitely directly influenced the vernacular. It influenced how we view things. It influences people's opinions. People wait to see what they have to say about something. And at one point when the show, I'd say there was a point that there was probably 5 or 6 seasons that were all perfect, and there was one 10 out of 10 episode after another. There was like the stretch where the show peaked.
The shock value was just crazy. It was great storylines, everything tied. Again, they're just so great at tying in all these bizarre story plots like Monty Python, but then just making them all come full circle.
Let me I guess we'll just break it down as simple as we can. What does South Park mean to each one of us individually? And I'll start, because Sharkfoot is thinking about his answer a little bit. I'd say for me, South Park, as a libertarian myself, I think South Park takes a very libertarian approach to its storytelling. And I've read essays on this. And Trey and Matt people say they're libertarians, but I don't think they identify with any political leaning. And they're different guys. Matt Stone's like a very atheist guy. He's much more pragmatic. Trey's a little bit more agnostic. He's a little bit more emotionally based, spiritual based. If you see interviews with them, because I've watched hours, I did a lot of research for this video that I didn't need to do just because I love these two guys. But I'd say the libertarian approach, it's just kind of this middle ground thing. They're in the center more than, like, a lot of people claim to be in the center, but they're really not. They make fun of radicalism, extremism, religious extremism, atheist extremism, PC issues, conservatives. They go after both sides of any argument and try to find the middle ground of it. They don't just attack, and they never did this, even in the early days of the show when it wasn't as satirical and it wasn't as timely. It was never hateful. It was always showing you Cartman was always kind of the extreme. Trey Parker said it would take 20 years to figure Cartman out, because they created Cartman because there was no character like Archie Bunker on TV anymore. A character who said the screwed up things a lot of people think but don't actually get to say. Cartman says some truths, or at least some truth for a lot of people. And he's the one extreme. And then you have Kyle and Stan as kind of the morality, in a sense. And then Kenny's in the middle. And Trey and Matt are so good about this, about going to the extremes of both sides. And sometimes you see the point of, well, somebody's too sensitive here, but you should care about people's feelings. And it became a cliche to point like, I learned something today. They would run into the ground. But then they started to kind of evolve it and show that these kids were affected by the stuff going on around them. And the simplicity of children and how they view the world is their basic approach. You're like, how would kids see this? How would people in Colorado see this? How would people in our hometown view this sort of thing? If Kanye West came to this town, if Jennifer Lopez came to this town, about whatever is going on with Donald Trump or what have you. World of Warcraft's really relevant. They talk about it
through a child's perspective, mainly.
Yeah, through a child's perspective, which is more true. It's the child doesn't have as much of the bias that's affected by life. The child just sees it for what it is, and that's why they always have a little kid voice Ike.
And that's actually part of like what I think they started to lose in the later seasons, as we were talking about earlier. Like they started to drift away from that childlike perspective and whatnot. Kind of lost my train of thought there.
You can talk about the later seasons.
Well,
I'm fine with criticizing them. What's your problem with you're talking about a little bit like season 15 and on?
Well, yeah, essentially they try to take up this whole continuity situation and try to push this continuity. They did it fine in the earlier seasons where it was like running gags that would be mentioned back and forth here and there, or they'll do like a whole series of episodes and make like 4 episodes revolve around the same plot line that was going on throughout all 4 of the same episodes, but through different perspectives with the different characters. But now it's more focused on these like satirical jokes of grandeur on the political system, and as you said, what's South Park going to say tonight? It became a whole nother Daily Show in a way, like, oh, what's their perspective and things. And I really, as they said in interviews and stuff about the new season, I hope they do go back to that perspective with the kids, where it's more localized to the kids around South Park. Mr. Garrison's more relevant, not wrapped up in all these political plot lines and things like that. Randy's not trying to chase some childhood dream all the time. He's like just a bad or a goofy dad who's there. Kenny gets killed again. And even I like the idea of like, because they haven't moved up a grade since like what, season 4 or
it's been a while
5. Yeah. It'd be nice to see them go into 5th grade. I don't know if that's a popular idea or not, but that's something I would like to see, and it add a nice new dynamic and change everything. We could bring in a whole new character like Miss Chokes on Dick again, or something interesting.
Well, I agree with you in particular that I would much prefer, and Trey has said this, that he misses it too, because the thing was, back when South Park was timely in those days, it was a different era.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone on the internet commented on everything. Not everyone was so political back then. Not everyone tried to be a satirist or comedian. Now everyone does, be it YouTube or social media. So they were more relevant back then with that stuff. Nowadays, what Trey's talking about is like, yeah, it's not really worth talking about Donald Trump because everyone does. We need to go back to those core stories of the boys at the cafeteria talking about what's going on in the town.
I'd hate to say it, but because we've talked about this before, and I do kind of disagree with you, but I see your point. It's like how Chef was kind of the heart of the show.
Yeah,
and
I've
once
said
he
that.
left, and that was actually, some would say it was like the start of the decline. But after he left, like the seasons did still keep 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10.
I agree. I don't think the quality dropped. I just think you saw the heart slowly decrease, and people didn't realize it till a few years went by, because the show used to have they'd juxtaposition things like that. Like Chef would be this smooth black guy that was sleeping with all these women, but then he would actually teach these boys very moral lessons, and he believed in them. And there was a lot of those dynamics in the show that, quite frankly, aren't there anymore. They're really not. The characters feel very distant. The four boys don't feel as friendly as they used to, except for that one season. I think it was 19, with the Redskins game and cock magic.
Yeah, like they're scheming again and getting like more hijinks, more shenanigans. Like they just get up together and just like hey, let's play cops again or something like that. Like, I like those episodes when they're just being kids, like, oh, fuck this, we're gonna play Laundromat.
Well, the show changed so much. It used to be, which I think is why it's good, it evolved, but it used to be the boys, and it was very Stan and Kyle heavy, and then it became Cartman and Butters show for years.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much, because Butters is based off one of the guys that works for them, and he used to get in fights with Matt, and he'd be like, hey, come on, you guys, let's not do that. And they just said, let's make a whole character around this where we're just yelling.
That's really nice.
Yeah. Oh, cheeseburgers.
See, they'll never do this, but I want them to do more story arcs with Kenny.
Me too.
They hate Kenny much.
They've never liked Kenny. They got tired of killing him. And Kenny, we both think Kenny's like a standout character.
He's like pretty much like he's the most real character out of the whole show.
He feels like a real kid.
Yeah, he's like the kid who's actually poor, and he gets into porn and shit like that, you know.
Well, when he likes guy stuff, like Kenny's such a bro. Like he likes party, do bro stuff, like a lot of kids do. But he's also a good guy.
Yeah, you see his moral side come out, and it's like more like he's just a very logical, grounded individual. Other than Stan and Kyle, who can get whisked away in these like random adventures and crazy shit going on.
Well, also criticizing later seasons is kind of like a lame argument, only because the show's been on so long. It's kind of like, yeah, of course it's not as good as it was when it was.
Yeah, it's a very like weird thing. It's hard to review it because it's like it is true that there is somewhat of a decline, but you don't want to acknowledge it because it's like, well, 20 fucking years of a show.
Yeah, it's not going to be great for The Simpsons.
No one's talking shit on The Simpsons.
Yeah, compared to The Simpsons decline, it's not even close. This is, I mean, really, because South Park still occasionally has a really good episode. Yeah. It's just the episode to episode isn't as consistent as it used to be.
Like, oh no, they don't deliver every single episode. That's the only complaint we have. So when a show's like that, I mean.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. It's just, it kind of sucks. We only get like 10 episodes a year, and sometimes only like 3 or 4 of them I think are really good anymore. Mm-hmm. And I know Trey and Matt like to do that, we're going to write it all the week of before, and that's how they work at the pressure. I agree, but I just kind of wish they would spend a little bit more time on the scripts and storylines. Because when you see something, they do that with like Book of Mormon, or where they spend time on it. It's so much richer.
They allow it to come to fruition. And
newer South Park's too quick. Yeah. It doesn't let
the plot lines they're trying to handle on all the random story arcs and everything, like it doesn't work for the grand setting that they're putting it in a 6-day format. I don't think they can just shit all that out because it seems rushed. Like they really jumped around a lot.
They do. It does feel rushed, and sometimes they'll say some episodes kind of suck because they don't have anything that day.
Well, normally back in the day they would flush it out more, or it'd be weird, there'd be gags going on in it.
Yeah, like remember when Barbra Streisand, Mega Death Streisand, and then Robert Smith from The Cure comes. Nothing about that satirical or timely. Yeah. It was
Robert Smith from The Cure.
I'm Robert Smith from The Cure, and it was all so funny.
Yeah,
and crazy, and like anime and mech stuff and Godzilla and all of their influences. Like South Park at its best is when the things that are kind of niche and not like World of Warcraft, everyone was playing WoW at their place, and then they got Blizzard to work with them, and the thing that actually happened, the story, like get the key, someone's killing characters.
Yeah, that actually was a real story.
That really happened.
Like, kind of hacked into the system or something, and it just freaked them out. So they had to put in the keys together, turn it, and do like the actual Sword of a Thousand Truths situation.
Yeah, and
and that was. Trey Parker said he was thinking about killing himself over that episode. And that was actually one of their best episodes that they've ever made.
Top 10.
Yeah.
The top 10 episode. My favorite... Let's throw out what's your favorite... I'll say my favorite episode, then you can say your... Mine's Scott Tenorman Must Die.
Understand, is it because it's just so fucking out, like,
it's
crazy?
The moment that Cartman stops being... They even said this is the moment where Cartman goes completely psycho in the show. He's no longer the Cartman.
Yeah, that's the big division in his character.
Well, also the voice changes, because the old Cartman, before he did the voice stuff...
It used to be my
now it's more enunciative.
But he couldn't do it anymore with his throat, so then they just take his voice, and he's like, I'm sorry, Mama. Then they make it sound like, I'm sorry.
Right.
But that became... I think that was the turning point. And also for the show, because at that point, it kind of quit being... That was the point where they took South Park to its most like insane place of just being in the town where it's like, okay, Cartman's gonna feed a guy's dead parents to him and then lick his tears and smile in joy as I mean, it's got, because it's really a 18 minutes of setup of crapping on Cartman, and then the last couple minutes is the biggest payoff the show ever had. Like generally, and for me it was a show, but that's probably my favorite episode because of the impact it on me. But there's tons of classics, and I'm a big fan of the early seasons.
Yeah, I'm shocked you can even pick one, honestly, because like they're all, again, like there's that 5-season run of 10 out of 10 episodes.
I know,
all like they're basically the same structured and format. And they're all great, so it's really like if you pick one, then you pick them all. But I mean, if any one of them stands out to me, I mean,
Which one made you laugh the most or something? You know?
see, there's the issue there, and
because you know maybe when you watch
definitely
the
one
most.
from like the 3rd or 4th season. Oh, like Fun with Weapons, because I know that situation. I've actually been in a sword fight with my brother with real swords, and he smacked me in the face with a sword. And it's like, so I know what it's like to be in that shitty situation when you throw like a ninja star at somebody.
You know what I love about that episode when I think about it? It's like they took the premise of Rugrats where the kids have this fantasy thing and with the babies, but they made it, they actually showed consequences.
Yeah.
Consequences of throwing in ninja star!
Oh yeah, and the VHS tapes too. It goes in, he quotes that when they're performing for elderly people too.
Yeah, they're at an
sit down, ninja star!
He throws a ninja star Trey Parker in an old man's head and he starts doing Metallica covers.
Kick me off on my ride to hell.
Also, we were talking about just like we're huge fans. If you don't know, DVDA is Trey Parker's band with Matt Stone,
which stands for double vaginal, double anal.
Yeah, and it's basically all the music in South Park, Team America, all that is considered DVDA because Trey and Matt say that they like to think of themselves as a band, not directors and writers, and everything they work on is an album.
And I think that's just a great mentality to work off there, Pat. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think it is.
I think that's a great way to start.
I think that's a real great way to start.
All
this
right,
thing.
nothing to see here. Yeah. Let's move along.
Howdy ho! Remember Mr. Hanky, man? I miss him.
I hated Mr. Hanky.
I could see not liking him.
I mean, I like
it's a little much.
It was funny to, I just got tired of watching the episodes over and over because it's just shit all over the screen. It's like, I get the joke. Okay.
It's a shitty joke.
I love when they do a shit joke later in the seasons and go, Emmy Award winning series.
Yeah. Oh, you know what's a good episode to bring up too. Fun with Weapons is a great one. The creature one, the Christmas Tale with Cartman telling the story of Stan and the critter or Kyle.
Oh, I thought that was Stan telling his story about the Woodland Critter Christmas.
I thought Cartman was the one that was actually telling the story though.
I can't remember. I thought it was Stan who wrote the story.
No, I think the plot twist was that it seemed like Stan was, but then Cartman was actually telling the whole story the whole time.
Probably. I need to see it again.
But then the abortion and everything. That was a pretty. And then the episode where the chef comes back was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and then they killed him off in the best way possible.
Yeah, and they used really bad audio ADR.
For some reason, every time I close my eyes and think of South Park, I go to Creme Fraiche. I love Creme Fraiche.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's a pretty good message to it too.
Terrence and Phillip are Canadian stereotypes that are very funny that have been throughout the show.
Cartman's mom is still a whore, and Cartman's mom is a dirty slut. Or Cartman's mom is still
that's a great
slut.
episode.
Those
the two-parter. Yeah.
But I really love it because they got death threats over the April Fool's premiere. Like when it was supposed to show Cartman's mom is still a dirty slut, which is Leanne Cartman for the Leanne joke running.
Yeah.
But they did only Terrence and Phillip episode on April Fool's Day right after when they were supposed to premiere the second part of that, and they got like a shit ton of death threats for that and everything. They're making fun of that on the VHS tapes too.
Yeah, those old intros, if you can go and find them on YouTube, they're well worth your time. Like, it actually gives you a great insight into Trey and Matt's process and their humor, and you can see how it transfers to animation.
You really start to realize that this is just how they are.
Yeah,
you can see their personality in the show very well.
Well, even till this day, you see them in interviews at Comic-Con or something, and I mean recent interviews, and they still talk like, "Oh, dude, that's gonna be sweet. Yeah. Oh, we want it to be sweet, dude.
Oh, we should have done Megaforce, man. That movie was freaking sweet."
They still talk like they did in like 1995. It hasn't changed at all.
All I want to know is what happened to that Dean guy, Squeak.
Yeah.
In the original movies. But we're here to talk about animation.
But let's go into specifically though, because I think it's a really good thing to transition to, because it's a great animated film. I think we should talk about Bigger and Longer Uncut a little bit. Why? Because to me that is the pinnacle of South Park. I think that's the best it ever was, and I don't think it's ever been that good again.
Really got the attention on it.
It's when they got respected, because honestly, they thought at the time, and a lot of people did. This was the thought that South Park was kind of wrapping up, because a lot of people did think it was just gimmick of Kenny dies, the boys swear, anal probe out of the boys. But I'd seen a lot of people were kind of getting a little. They were like, well, we've seen it. It's kind of over. There's nothing to do with it. And then they came out with a movie, and everybody was like, well, how are they going to... It's the only TV movie adaptation I've ever seen in my life that transcends the television show it's based off of and becomes better than the TV show ever could. It's the best long-form episode of South Park. It's got the best use of the characters.
Great music.
The songs are all brilliant. It influenced Robert Lopez to write Avenue Q, who then worked with Trey and Matt on Book of Mormon after they saw Avenue Q. It all creates one thing. It has that. They even wrote it as to be the finale for South Park. The ending's clearly the ending when the camera zooms out and they're all there together.
I mean, if you couldn't tell that, I mean, just from Kenny revealing his face at the end, that was the end of South Park. You get to see Kenny. Well,
and you finally get Hell, and you get the funniest Satan in cinema history.
I love how you have sympathy for Satan.
Yeah.
And you love Satan. He's a likable character.
Well, Trey always wanted to do a big musical with a big orchestra, and he never got to. And then they got to do songs like Uncle Fucka and all that with an orchestra, and they got to do these big compositions. And it showed. And Trey Parker got an Oscar nomination for Blame Canada for Best Song, and that did legitimize South Park in a lot of ways and give it a new life because people go, "Wow, these guys are satirists. They are good. This isn't just a schlock thing. This is legitimately art."
Yeah, this isn't toilet humor.
Well, they made one of the
way.
greatest comedies of all time. I think that's one of the funniest films ever made. Every time I just watched it like a year ago.
I mean, most people my age grew up with it. I mean,
they showed up. What's funny now is they say everything that's in that movie they could just do on the show now and it wouldn't get censored, and they only did the movie because they could swear and do this, and that's kind of true. But there's still a novelty about that movie in the year 1999, the great year of cinema. When you watch that film, it feels like something that never existed before it, like a mainstream R-rated animated and there was Fritz the Cat and stuff like that. But South Park having the dense dialogue and all the stuff going on, and
so many moving pieces coming together and everything. Like it was I think it was more of a musical than a movie. And
I agree.
I'm sure a lot of people would too.
It's directed like a classic musical. It's got a Music Man like aesthetic to its approach to it. It makes South Park, which is so great about the town of South Park, right? They can adapt it into an RPG and make it fleshed out, or they can adapt it into a musical like setting, or it could be like an apocalyptic.
It really just shows how like infinite the possibilities are with this show's format, and
I think it's why it's been on 20 years. It's the setup, and there's the idea of the animation. If you come up with the right format, if you think up the right character designs, even if they're simple. And
that's actually key to animation.
Yeah, simplicity.
Keep it simple. Like all the characters in South Park it's such it's a very unique, one of a kind design that they have. Like it's their design.
It's adorable. The kids look cute. Yeah. The eyes are cute.
It's extremely easy to animate. Well, not like easier than other things.
It's pretty easy for animators.
Animation's just very tedious in general, but.
South Park, I mean, they could do an episode in like 2 days animation, so it's not that difficult. Because they do most of it on a computer now, and it's because they used to do it back with the cardboard and everything like that.
That was a fun.
And they make fun of that in one of the episodes, but it just shows you that if you're really talented, you can use animation to tell the kind of stories that you want to tell that you can't tell in other mediums. Even if you're not the most brilliant animator like a Genndy Tartakovsky or John Kay or Rene Laloux's work or anything like. But the South Park movie, it could never be done as anything but an animated musical. They couldn't have done any of those jokes in live action. They couldn't have filmed any of that stuff in live action. And it didn't need good animation to be fun. I like the animation, but it's that simple, crude animation.
All they ever did with the animation was make sure that the audience knows what they're looking at.
That's it.
That's all they had to do.
They convey the information. And the movie does such a great job of taking the foundation the show had built and then having actual character development. Like you see the payoff with... Because there was a long time Kyle's mom was a big character in the show, and she was a big driving force antagonist, and they really bring that to fruition, fruition or whatever, and then at the ending of the show, and then the movie, and they bring Ike's story around, they bring Terrence and Phillip's story around. I mean, it's really a culmination of all Chef. Everyone gets a big moment.
So if that really was the end of South Park, I have to say that was a pretty good wrap up.
But not just that, they bring in side characters that are classics. The Mole. One of the funniest characters they ever created. I hate you, God, you son of a bitch. I'm coming up there. When my mother put the clothes when I was still in the womb. He's ooh ah ooh ah.
A dying giraffe.
That sounds like a baby. That sounds like a dying baby giraffe.
I was like, how the hell did it? What?
No, I'm super. Thanks for asking. Which they think that number should be cut. That's a terrific number.
All right, maybe you'll make your way to the auditorium to see Winona Ryder.
Yeah, I know. Do you want to see my ping pong trick?
And it's her just acting like, shut the fuck.
It's one of the funniest films. I saw it when I was like 9 or 10, and it blew me away. I like it like it shook my world because I was like this tight-lipped Christian boy, good guy kid, and I was like, oh my god, these cartoon kids are swearing and there's boobies in heaven and
faggot.
And but then you watch it now and you wonder, is this gonna hold up? It's just as transcendent as I thought it was. Man, that film's aged wonderfully. It holds up so well. Like it plays so well. And there's a joke, and Book of Mormon has it too. There's a joke probably every 30 seconds. It's when Trey and Matt are firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And you can't really beat their comic timing. Like, because they kind of are Monty Python. Monty Python was irreverent, but they also did speak a lot about the world we live in and use these ridiculous situations and character. I mean, I'd compare that movie more than anything to Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I think it shares a lot of similarities with that movie, more so than like A Life of Brian or something, in the constant momentum of jokes.
Yeah.
And keeps opening itself up more and more.
Well, this is great writing.
Yeah, it's a great script. Yeah, and it showed Trey's talent that he could write full songs that could flesh out a story, which I guess a lot of film critics hadn't seen Cannibal before that, because I think he already showed that with Spadoinkle Day or
Orgasmo.
Yeah, Orgasmo. Yeah. But the best part of the movie to me is, though, it represents the show in its best way, is that it's small town taking responsibility for some epic thing. Like, the great thing about South Park is the town always thinks, the characters think that they can save the world or change what's happening. South
Yeah.
Park's always in the middle of everything
It's
going
that
on.
small town mentality.
Yeah, that
They
we
live
can.
in a bubble.
Yeah, they live in a bubble, and the movie's the perfect representation of that, to where the town makes a war happen with Canada. South Park itself. And then a lot in the show, Cartman's plot lines end up becoming bigger and making South Park really expand. Where he, oh, he hates gingers. Then he finds out he is a ginger. Then he starts running the whole group and taking over. There's a lot of those factors. That's what I love about the film. It's intricate plotting. If you see Trey and Matt in this college thing where they're showing college kids how to write, and they show this therefore but thing, that when you write something, it's got to lead to this and connect the dots. They follow that pattern with South Park, even on lesser episodes. They know story structure. Say what you will about Mel Gibson, but he knows stories. They do. They know story structure. Every episode of South Park, they used to follow. They used to not kind of like the 3-act thing. They used to say, like, oh, we kind of like do 2 halves, and then we kind of like having a 4th act. But then they realized with the show, oh, we can do 3-act traditionalism structure. And South Park is a perfect example, not so much of the medium of animation, but that of storytelling, and the fact that if you structure your stories properly and you find your right format, you can just keep pumping out creative energy and stories over and over and over and over again. And if the same people stay right, because like The Simpsons, most of the great writers left that show after like season 4 or 5. South Park's had the same 2 guys at the head of it, with different people coming in. Kenny Hotz worked on a season.
Yeah.
Bill Hader's been on for a few
Kenny
years
Hotz
now.
from Kenny versus Spenny.
Yeah, one of my favorite shows of all time, which I think is
Pretty
very
much the best reality show ever.
I think very comparable to South Park in a lot of ways, actually, in the humor. I could see why they wanted
it's
him.
That punk rock,
Kenny's
vibe.
very, yeah.
It always goes back just to that, punk rock. That's the first
Which is
thing
what
to
you
say.
want. It's basically have balls.
It's like,
stick to your guns and make something that's really funny and
make
dynamic.
something you want to make, and don't just like submit to another penis in your butt.
Something you would find funny and you like. Like, if you explain this concept to someone, like, I have this idea of South Park and it didn't exist, and you explain these things, that they might be like, that sounds a little crazy. But once you see it, you totally get it.
Hey man, that's a little crazy.
And that's kind of how Trey's stuff always works. Is Trey's a very quirky, I think kind of borderline a little wacky guy, like mad genius, kind of like a really nerdy. I mean, he played D&D with Elon Musk. Very weird. But and then it's just that it's like Matt Stone saw that genius creative energy and then knew that, like, wow, we can do something with this dude, and then they really started to work off each other, because sometimes you need a muse. And I do think Matt Stone, I think Leanne, I think the town they grew up in, I think it's all their muse, and I think it's Trey's muse, and I think that Matt understands Trey's sense of humor and his sensibilities. I think it just makes it richer, because then Matt could say, well, hey, add this joke, or hey, don't do that. Because Trey could probably get lost in his own mindset of creativity, because he writes almost every episode by himself, all fan after jokes. He directs every episode of South Park. But I think what's so great about that show is that you can tell it is well produced and it has good management and time management, and everything seems to really be well paced. But I don't know. South Park, if anything, is a show that we grew up on, that was our generation's The Simpsons, as you said, and I agree with that. Like, for a lot of people, The Simpsons was a 70s, 80s generation, and you grew up and you saw it in the 90s, and it was ground. And I love The Simpsons, one of my favorite shows. I own the first 10 seasons on DVD, and the commentaries are definitely worth listening to. Trey and Matt's commentaries kind of suck because they only talk for 5 minutes.
And then they get like hammered or
they don't like doing commentary, so they either get drunk or high, or there's a great commentary. The Cannibal the musical commentary is great because Trey Parker gets drunk and calls out Leanne. And he's like, I think the line is like, oh, I'm worth $7 million, and you're with the manager of Foley's.
Whoops.
Yeah, whoops. He does a Randy. Whoops. Hot, 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 hot.
Yeah.
And the show changes with them. They used to write more of the youthful stuff. Then when they got older, they write more Randy because he relates to being middle aged now. And then, then they love Cartman more, and then they kind of leave. Lately, they've been trying to give Cartman, I feel like, a moral arc lately, which is kind of a new thing. They've kind of been changing Cartman a little bit in the last couple of seasons.
Tinkering with his structure. I don't know.
But my biggest issue with the show, if I'm just talking overflow, I wish they would use more of the side characters more. I'm glad this season in particular used Gerald.
They need to, we were talking again,
the cop.
Yes, the Cap. They need to use the Cap more.
With the red hair and the mustache, the cop guy. He's one of the funniest characters.
He's just so ridiculous.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like they don't realize they have this whole canvas of characters that they can do stories with, and they don't want to do all these stories with them. It's like, man, there's so many good characters in South. Where's the mayor anymore?
I mean, yeah, they only had like one episode of like Mr. Mackey was all focused about him and
Yeah,
Shinchin.
Officer Barbrady like shows up occasionally in
And
a
then
couple.
like last couple seasons, he had kind of a role, and that was about it.
Yeah, they don't really want to focus on the side characters, and I miss that. I
Because
miss the town dynamic.
The episode where Mr. or Officer Barbrady can't read is one of my favorites. Chicken Lover.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's what like Scott Tenorman, like all the stuff bounced off of that was a lot of the town dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, chef making the chili, and they can't being like the chili's terrific, chef. You know, and you know the World of Warcraft thing. All the kids were playing it in the
What
town.
I didn't expect was for Chef's Chili to be amazing.
Yeah. And the you know in the early days there was a lot of like shock humor, like chocolate salty balls, or you know Cartman has a probe coming out of his butt, and then you know like Kenny dies in really gory ways. But as it went on, you could tell they got a groove.
Yeah,
for what
they
it was.
matured in their writing, and then it seems
And they got older too.
Yeah, which always sucks.
They were very young when they started South Park, like insanely young to be doing a show like this, like in their 20s. But you know, it sucks because I always wonder if South Park takes away from the movies or plays they could be making because they spend so much time working on South Park. Like it does always. I'm kind of like, cause after I saw Book of Mormon, I'm like, do I want more of this and less South Park? You know, I'm kind of.
I just want them to make another movie again, like another type of Team America, not with puppets, but just another movie
a comedy
of that caliber.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I
Yeah.
miss them making. I get that they got burned out on that movie because of the puppets, but
I don't blame them.
no, I don't blame them either. But like, you don't have to do the puppets again. Like, make another live action flick. I would love to see them do some kind of like cop type parody or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah,
or,
definitely.
You know. I miss Trey being on camera. I just think he was a really funny actor. He's a little older now, but he was very, and I will say without sounding it, very good looking guy. Trey and Matt. Yeah, Trey and Matt, very handsome fellas. They were just made for this.
Yeah. Oh, I guess we should start wrapping it up.
Yeah, wrapping. Okay, so if you had to summarize South Park's effect on your life, and I don't want you to give me your crappy like, oh, I don't care, it has no effect, because this is not.
I don't say that.
You say that more than once. You had that with Samurai Jack and another one where you try to be like,
okay, fair enough.
It doesn't mean anything to me. I don't want to hear that because I've known you for years and you love South Park religiously.
Yeah,
and you know every line.
I mean, it's my entire sense of humor.
Yeah,
like it was literally.
So I think you got to contribute that a lot of you is inspired by the show. Yeah,
far enough to the point of like plagiarism.
Yeah.
Like that's my humor exactly.
Yeah, and
like they raised me on that show. So thanks, Matt and Trey.
So do you think we could credit South Park with the humor of the generation, like pre-internet?
Yes, exactly. Like like all good and bad aspects of it.
Yeah.
Like the complete fuck you and a complete disregard and like just
the like, disregard for traditionalism,
like,
but looking at family values and dynamics.
The positive mindset I think that can come from that type of sense of humor was like just the complete cynicism of how fucked up the government is and how fucked up your parents are, and the fact that you're a kid, you're stupid. You don't know anything as much
or that parents can be stupid and the government and teachers.
Or maybe make mountains out of molehills.
Yeah.
Like, don't take everything too seriously. Calm the fuck down.
Yeah, perspective.
Yeah.
Because
like,
it's all about
like, perspective. And, like, even with the shit episode, I mean, they even acknowledged something that they were getting, like, blamed for. It's like, oh, you're just a swear toilet humor show. And they said shit 162 times or something.
Or the cynicism episode where Stan just, like, hates every trail.
It's called being a cynical asshole.
Yeah, and Trey was feeling that way at the time. And, you know, like, the trailer to The Zookeeper with Kevin James just had him profoundly depressed, and rightfully so.
Jack and Jill.
But yeah, I was gonna say, because a lot of people always try to, you know, we always try to just be more, we try to be more analytical here. But I think there's a clear, for my life,
it's pretty present.
It's influenced me. I mean, one partner I had that I worked with, I mean, we pretty much were like, hey, we're Trey Parker and Matt Stone. That's what we're going for. And I always go back to them for anything. And it's funny because it's not like their cinematography or direction or anything they do is that brilliant. It's just what they do with what they have and how they make it unique to themselves is what any great artist should do. But in particular, you can do this with animation and create a 20-year-long show like South Park because you don't have to worry about actors aging. You don't have to worry about necessarily rules. And they obey kind of rules. They don't let it go crazy into a cartoon logic. They obey their own rules and logic for the most part. Kenny's death's a little up in the air.
Well, you know, unless it's like an over-exaggerated gag to do.
But I think the thing in South Park is, it feels realistic. It feels right, doesn't it? Sometimes it feels like the town we all grew up in, the place we know. But then you remember, like, oh wait, this is a cartoon with anal probe coming out of a kid's butt, and you know, starving little African kids and
starving
Canadians being like, God damn it, Philip.
Marklar.
Yeah, but Yeah, because I know this had to have an impact on you.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, not just like musically or comedically.
I mean, when I was like 4 years old, I got in trouble for making a little comic strip that's like literally all the kids from South Park.
I drew one too when I was like 12.
I
I
had to
drew
say
a
it in
thing.
front of my mom. I cried. It was funny.
Yeah, I had one hanging in my room. I drew like because it was one of the only things I could draw was the South Park characters. It's so simple.
I mean, no, that's where my savageness comes from.
Simple designs, elegant storytelling, humor. Don't sacrifice the humor. Like South Park just tries to be funny more than anything.
Yeah, just go for the joke.
Yeah, go for the right joke and only use the animation as a means to tell the jokes and the stories you want to tell. Animation's not just a scapegoat to be indulgent or to make what they call the animator's film, where it's just animation without much else going on. It's got to be something else. It's got to reinforce what the ideas are in the storytelling.
Right.
And South Park maybe is the best example of this, right with The Simpsons in long form. They're like the two, because The Simpsons has terrific animation work by a lot of great directors and had some great writers. But yeah, it did have an impact, and I think that I think the New York Times even wrote an article where they said it was a whole essay that I'm not gonna lie that my opinions have been influenced by four boys from Colorado. And I think everyone kind of feels that way, that South Park joined pulp culture in a way that
people wrote like college thesis on
South Park
well, there's
and things. Well, I think what it is that Trey and Matt, more than most things I've ever seen, they convey their worldview, who they are, what they like in that show.
Which is what art is this absolute expression. And again, everything that they have in that show is pretty much taken from their childhood.
Yeah, and even when you see the bits they do in live action, it's exactly like what they're doing. Like, it's consistent. You can go 20 years back and find the same stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, Trey and Matt have been consistent, and they're two of the only guys I think they got ego, never got lost in celebrity and Hollywood and all that. They're still grounded. They're still cool guys.
They've just been best friends with each other. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, they had strength in each other, but I think I couldn't praise South Park enough as a whole. Like, it's not obviously there's seasons that are lesser that I would give lesser, but like if you look at it as a whole for 20 years, it's a masterpiece. It really is. It's a work that's all of one piece. Mm-hmm. It's not just one thing. Like, Stan's why South Park's good. Kyle's why South Park's good.
All of it.
It's all of it.
Pieces of
even the opening credits set the tone for every episode.
Les Claypool of Primus.
Yeah,
I think it was just Les Claypool. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it sounds very Primus.
Well, Les Claypool is Primus.
Yeah, basically. No, it's like Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails.
Same guy.
But yeah, there's that whole. Yeah, that even the opening I think always does such a good job of setting the town aesthetic and what we're getting into.
Going on down to South Park.
Gonna meet some friends of mine. Yeah, and
it's like getting on the bus and
it makes you I do miss the bus stuff. Like, what did you say?
What did you say?
I said squirrels like nuts. Oh, yeah, that's true.
What the fuck?
And he said something like, "You fucking suck" or something, Yeah, no, I would love that. I do miss kind of the mean humor side. I feel like South Park's gotten a little sweeter in its later years, but that's fine.
Well, definitely, like, where they took away some of the meanness, there's definitely more deception and more fucked up shit going on. There's like always some grand plot behind like Cartman being nice.
That's true. There is more evil in the show now too, and I guess
very evil.
But yeah, Maganimation episode, what was it, 7?
Yeah,
I think it's well, so far this is the first thing we've covered that's still on currently and been on a long time. Aqua Teen was 11 years, but this is 20, and there's a new season coming out. So I guess all we could say is, if you really love South Park and you want to watch season 21, I hope this video you can relate to it somewhat. Even though a lot of South Park fans know a lot of this stuff already.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This is just South Park 101. But I hope at some level you can get why people kind of love the show, why it's stuck with people, at least emotionally, not just intellectually. But South Park, I dare to say, it's got a little bit of soul in it. It's got a little bit of Isaac Hayes in there. It's got a little bit of soul, a little bit of passion. A little gay. Yeah, it's a little gay. Yeah. As Trey once said, it's like asking me if I'm gay. It's like, well, on Friday night it's midnight, maybe. I don't know, sometimes. And I think Trey's philosophy in the world that sometimes everybody can be one kind of person is the approach to South Park. Mm-hmm. There's not one finite way a human being has to be or how you have to feel about something. It's not that way. Life isn't concrete. But do you have any final thoughts, South Park, before we go to the next episode? Do you want to leave any? Is there any little bit you forgot, or maybe a character you want to mention, or something about a humor thing you like? Is there fun? He's just staring at me.
No.
Well, I brought up I missed the bus stuff. Is there anything you miss or things you love before we wrap it up? I
miss Mr. Slave a little bit. Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, Mr. Slave. Yeah.
That was blowing me away.
Yeah, I missed that dynamic.
I can't remember if they killed off Mephisto or not.
I can't remember either.
Kevin.
Yeah.
The little monkey guy.
Yeah. But yeah, South Park is South Park. Even when it's not great, it's still South Park, and
Yeah,
that's
it's
always
still
good.
better than what else is going on.
That's true.
I'll always watch South Park.
Me too. We're gonna watch the new season as soon as it starts, and we're gonna talk about it to each other. Probably not on here. That's probably gonna be the last South Park video we do for a while. But
Yeah.
hey man, friendly faces everywhere. You know, that's what it is.
Homeless
So
folks without temptation.
yeah, so I'd recommend going down to South Park and meeting some friends and going on this show, because if you haven't seen it, which if you haven't, what the hell, you're missing out. And if you have seen it, appreciate it a little bit more.
And if you don't like it, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, you're wrong.
Yeah, asshole.
So this is Pat and Sharkfoot, and thank you for watching. And we'll try to do the next episode a little quicker. And I don't know what we're going to cover. Leave your requests for the next episode in the comments. What you want us to review and talk about, because we'll talk about anything really if we find interest in it. We would just like to talk about things we love, and our friendship is very much built around the things we've talked about. And South Park is a fundamental part of that, as much as Ren and Stimpy was, and Samurai Jack, and
Freakazoid.
Freakazoid's going to be an episode eventually. We're gonna have to do a Freakazoid. I'm really do Freakazoid commentary. We just watch like 20 all episodes of Freakazoid.
Why don't we just do that?
Because I own the DVD. I would just watch Freakazoid. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope we didn't rant on too long, but I think we covered a lot of different points of history. And we'll try to be quicker on the next one. Leave your requests, like, and subscribe.
And ring the bell.
Yeah, and ring the bell. Yeah, so the notifications if you don't click the bell. And, dude, guys, please rewind your VHS tapes. Dylan used to work at a video store, and people never rewound their VHS tapes, and he got so frustrated being back there. He was a 12-year-old kid working at a video store. It was very difficult for him to be rewinding those tapes.
It was a family-owned video store.
He was the rewind boy for his family's video store.
Didn't get paid.
So yeah, just rewind those VHS tapes, especially those South Park VHS tapes. So you can go back to the beginning intro.
Please don't tape over them of you fucking my ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
All right.
As happened to him when he was a 12-year-old. That was very traumatic.
South Park.